Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. London's Greenwich and Docklands International Festival began as a free outdoor festival in 1996 in a part of London that has seen major changes over the subsequent 26 years. The festival managed to continue throughout the COVID pandemic and has now announced its 27th programme of events, which will run from the 26th of August to the 11th of September 2022. GDIF Artistic Director Bradley Hemmings MBE, who also co-directed the opening ceremony for the 2012 London Paralympic Games, spoke to me about this year's festival and about its past developments. But first, I asked him to explain, for those of us outside London, what GDIF actually is.
Greenwich and Docklands International Festival is a festival of free outdoor theatre and performing arts. It's been running now since 1996, so I think this is our 27th edition. And what the festival does, it does many things, but I've always thought that at its heart, it responds to, channels and shares stories of Greenwich and East London, this phenomenal evolving part of the world, which, over those 27 years has seen so much change. But in a way, I'd like to think of the festival as being part of the whole place that is Greenwich and East London. And we're there to tell people stories, but also to give them experiences and memories that they'll live with for a long time afterwards. So a lot of the things that we do, for example, are very visual, captivating, all very accessible. And so often people will go away with an experience of a place they may walk through every day and think of it in a completely different way thereafter. So there are many things like that.
But although it's London-based, and you say it's about the London community, it is an international festival. So how do you balance the international with the local?
Yeah, we work with both international and UK artists. I think the international perspective is really important for us. I mean, the UK is a kind of phenomenally international place. We're all connected with different parts of the world, and I think that needs to be celebrated and shared in a festival like ours. So, of course, we're international because we all are. And it is, when I was talking about the story of Greenwich and East London earlier on, it's like a profoundly important part of that, not just our connections internationally, but with our connections with other parts of the UK too. We've got a kind of phenomenal theatre production coming to us this summer for its London premiere called Peaceophobia, which has been produced by Fuel and is written by Zia Ahmed, but it's been developed in Bradford. But tells a very authentically local Bradford story about the experiences of Islamophobia in a really ingenious way. But that story is completely universal, not just to London. Yesterday, I was actually is in Antwerp with my counterpart there, Patrick de Groot, who runs the Summer in Antwerp festival program there. And he got really excited by Peaceophobia. So, as far as I'm concerned, we've had some ups and downs in terms of the mechanics of all of this for obvious reasons in the last 2 years. But, internationalism is the lettering on the rock. Yeah, we have to do it. Yeah.
So, apart from Peaceophobia, then, what are the highlights of this year's festival?
Well, in terms of an opening moment, I talked earlier on about how things are phenomenally visual and stop traffic and make us all reflect and stand in awe. We're opening with this incredible, another UK premiere from a Dutch artist called Dan Roosgaard, who has devised a way of delivering a public celebration in an entirely environmentally responsible way. I mean, usually this sort of thing is done with fireworks and combustible materials, and what Dan's brilliantly invented and devised is an event, it's an installation, durational installation, which takes place over 2 hours on the 26th and 27th of August, which will do all those amazing things that those kind of public celebrations do, but will do it sustainably. He was inspired by the behavior of fireflies when he was traveling. And so there's a sort of sense of that. And you're just in this world of a myriad of sparks which surround you, and you lie back on a blanket and look up in awe. So I love doing things like that I think speak very powerfully to where we are now. We're after the heat wave we've just been through the last few days or longer, if it didn't need to be brought home, that the need for us all to be environmentally responsible and to reflect on that couldn't be more urgent. So work like that helps us think about that and reconnect to the natural world in some way, I think is really an important thing for the festival to do.
Yeah. So what's special about an outdoor festival? What are the challenges of an outdoor festival that you would know? Obviously, the weather in this country. I mean, the weather. Usually, we think of rain as being something that will spoil outdoor theatre, but the last couple of days would also have been quite a challenge. Yeah.
Well, let's start with what's special about it.
Okay.
Before we go into why do we do it? I mean, I think the thing that you can't get away from when you're at an outdoor theatre event is that you are actually there gathered with a body of other people that you can't ignore. I think sometimes when you go into a theatre, into a black box, you can have an experience that feels kind of very much personal. It's between you in a darkened room and what's happening on the stage. Yeah. But in the outdoor world, there's none of that.
No.
And you're there as part of a congregation. And actually that is part of the magic of it, because you're swept up in other people emoting or responding or behaving informally. You don't have to emote. No. It's not compulsory. But you can relax. You can talk to your mate or your kids, and you can connect with each other. And I feel that's tremendously important, because what that helps us to do is reach audiences who might not otherwise decide, and we want them to buy a ticket and go into a building. So we've got a very, I think, powerful set of relationships with the building-based world, and we really value those. But I think what we're able to do is something very special in that way. And I think there is something as well about the way in which, in presenting work in public space, you can create a dynamic with a space, with a familiar building or an iconic building, or actually a little known courtyard or a square on a housing estate, which has never actually been, has never actually hosted anything before, but it becomes an amazingly magical theatre space as a result of what will be put in place. Now, the challenges with that is that every time we do it, we have to build the theatre from scratch, as it were. Yeah. You can't, and that means everything from building the relationships with the audience, but also putting the infrastructure in place, securing the permissions to do it. And it's a very circumscribed area, ever increasingly so as London, and it's the same across the country as cities develop and become denser and denser. There are lots of permissions to negotiate. So the hard work is all of that: logistics and licensing and production and technical management. But those are all absolutely vital and at the heart of why I believe that this is kind of and I'm very proud to lead this group of people in this room here, in this red room here in Greenwich, who do these amazingly difficult things and make impossible things happen. Yeah,
and you've been doing it for a long time, so I suppose you've come across any possible problems that you could have with outdoor theatre by now.
There's always something new, as we've seen in the last few days. I mean, when I was with Patrick yesterday, I went to see some outdoor circus in Ghent, which was amazing. That was Monday, but on Tuesday I wanted to see a production which had an intergenerational cast. And they simply couldn't do it. I went to a rehearsal and saw some of it, but they couldn't do it because of 100 degrees in Antwerp. So that's territory that we haven't really actually gone into yet, but a learning curve there.
Yes, which we might need to learn more often for in the future, unfortunately. So what are the venues that you're using this year? You say they change each year. You might be somewhere new each time.
We're always adding new venues, and I think that refreshes it. And even for people who are seasoned GDIF goers, actually finding spaces that they may never have walked on before is always a kind of bit of a miracle. It's a wonderful thing to be able to facilitate that. Yeah. The other thing that we've done, we managed somehow through 20 and 21 to keep the festival running. We are incredibly fortunate to just be in those brief windows when things like that were possible, both in August, September of 20 and 21. And we learned a lot through doing that. I mean, the festival before then used to do a lot of big destination town centre events where 5,000 people would pour into a town square and all be together, and they were amazing. But clearly we couldn't do that anymore. So we went very hyper-local in a lot of the things we're doing, and we're carrying that forward in the festival going forward, because we recognise how important it is in terms of reaching audiences where they live, who might not have access easily to those town centres. Irrespective of the COVID situation, that felt like a really valuable learning from those 2 years. But this year, there are new venues coming in. There's a kind of phenomenal former industrial site in Canning Town, the limo site, which is right hard on the Canning Town tube station. And it's a bit of a miracle, I've used that word again now, to find those kind of sites. We've worked with partners in the Royal Docks and Transport for London to identify and make safe that site, which has been used for the construction of Crossrail, because everything is being, everything when you look around is very highly developed now. It was when, in 27 years ago, you had access to a lot more unusual found spaces than you tend to in 2022. Yeah. So that's really... that's an exciting one. But we go into all sorts of locations and all sorts of scales as well. We're working with Tara Theatre on creating a promenade performance, Final Farewell, which will be presented on the Isle of Dogs. So it's an audio theatre experience, and you'll wander through this beautiful park, Riverside Park, Island Gardens, and then find your way through different streets and landscapes of the Isle of Dogs before returning to the Riverside. And I think sort of introducing people and opening their theatre ears and eyes in different environments like that is always wonderful. Mm. And I mean, in terms of also working with places year on year, I think there's a value there too. We're working again this year in Woolwich, which is a place that's really dear to our heart, connects powerfully with local audiences. But this year we're commissioning a major new piece called This Woven O, working with the disabled artist Oliver McDonald, who's going to create this outdoor auditorium created entirely from willow, circular installation, which will be open, accessible, safe, and it will be there'll be a site-specific show created in there by Grey Eye Theatre. Their associate artists are currently working to create a performance, Tales from the Woven O, which will be presented in there over 3 days in September. So Woolwich is always there as a perennial, as is of course Greenwich. We've got that at the front of our name, and the other one that we love every year is Canary Wharf, because we work there with this amazing program that's been going since 2002 now, called Dancing City, which brings together usually somewhere between 10 and 15 different outdoor dance companies from all over the world who perform in the piazzas and public spaces across Canary Wharf. It's always a really it's one that audiences absolutely love. That's why it's been there since 2002. It's got a very European al fresco feeling to it. People really soak that one up.
Yeah. You mentioned the word accessible a few times, and your association with Grey Eye and Jenny Seeley, which has been quite a long association, I believe. Accessibility is something that's really important to you, isn't it? That's sort of baked into the festival. How do you achieve that?
I mean, I think it's many things, but one, we have a phenomenal access producer, Alex Cavell, who leads that process. But I think it would be true to say that every department here thinks about access in everything it does. I think the thing with access is to remember that with an outdoor festival like ours, it's important for us that the audience represent and is the people of Greenwich and East London that we work in. And we know that there are 20% of those people who live in these parts of East London self-describe as deaf, disabled or neurodiverse. And so it's really important that they, can see themselves that the festival itself, all aspects of the festival, are accessible. It's a legal responsibility through across the country. But we go on an extra mile, I think, with this, and worked with Jenny a long time before. Of course, 10 years ago this year, we co-directed the opening ceremony of the Paralympic Games together. But we were working before then, and we're still cooking up things now. But many brilliant disabled artists, and I'm really excited too to see the way in which Grey Eye are developing a new generation of creative leaders who will be showcasing their work through this Woven O. Accessibility is
something, and diversity is something that we're hearing a lot about. But some people are saying that one of the groups of people that are often forgotten in that is class, people of working class, or people who maybe can't afford theatre. But you're dealing with that as well, aren't you? Because it's a free festival and you're taking theatre to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always been there for us as a free festival. Yeah. But you have to, I think, always remember too that you can't take it for granted that just because you're free that you're going to make that connection with an audience member. So you do have to do extra things. You have to, as you're saying, we're taking a new production from Middlechild out to Abbey Wood, which is sort of bordering Thamesmead, southeast London. They'll be working in a basketball court, but we're supporting with outreach and audience engagement a whole raft of work locally to bring audiences together for what's a really, family friendly. It's a hip hop music theatre piece. It's a lovely piece called There Should Be Unicorns. And then we're taking that show again to Deptford. But, many things are happening. As we say that we've got a season called On Your Doorstep. So we're over again in Canning Town, in Rathbone Market, with a Talawar show, The Tide, and new commission that we've made this year with a dance artist, Malik Bright, called Crowd Control, which sort of integrates movement and digital projection. So, taking the festival out there to where people actually are is really important, I think.
It's a free festival, but all of this is expensive to put on, isn't it? So how's the festival funded?
Well, that's alongside the delivery. That's the other really hard job. Yeah. We are Arts Council funded as an MPO. We'll have to see what happens with that when we get through to October. Arts Council support is really important. We have local authority funding. We have funding from organisations like Peabody, who are in the business of leading on regeneration in Thamesmead and other locations across London. We're working closely with Canary Wharf, with Greenwich Peninsula, who are looking after a really amazing part of the riverscape there at North Greenwich. But all those sponsors and funders, although they're massively important, don't pay for all of it. And so the festival is embedded in a bigger organisation called festival.org, which is the parent kind of company, if you like, which works throughout the year using the same skills, and nothing we do outside the festival is in a sense different in character from GDIF, but we're doing it for other people. And so we manage projects throughout the year, and we're always very open to hear for new invitations and so on to do that sort of work. We also run a really fascinating national programme, again, Arts Council funded programme called Global Streets, which takes international outdoor arts to 12 places, towns and cities across the country. So we're working with Birmingham Hippodrome, Cast in Doncaster. We're with Strike a Light in Gloucester, Culture Liverpool. It goes to 12 places around the country. And very much following on from what you said about, how do you reach audiences who are disenfranchised for reasons of, economics, cost of living crisis, everything else. But we're very much, that's a programme that goes out to places that really don't get access to theatre and culture in the same way as you would do if you lived in central London.
Mm. In 26 years, you must have seen some changes, not just to the festival, but to London itself. I mean, I'm sure Canary Wharf has changed quite a lot in 26 years. Itself.
It really is. I can see myself as a little baby artistic director in 1996, standing on Cussysart Gardens there and looking across the river, and there would have just been the solitary tower, the Pelly Tower, the one with the pyramid on top. That's all you would have seen. And now, obviously, it's a forest of of high buildings and corporate headquarters and so on. But then, at that time too, we hadn't got what was the Millennium Dome, now the O2, and there was no way. What was really, I think, the most significant thing, not about particularly one of the buildings and the regeneration has been phenomenal, but it's the transport connections and the way in which people across Greenwich and East London can travel back and forward, be with each other in different locations. That's totally transformed. In 1996, I could only walk under the river through a foot tunnel. Now, I've got DLR, Jubilee Line. We've also got Elizabeth Line. There are all these things that connect people and bring them closer together, which are so powerful.
Yeah, I suppose the opportunities for a festival like yours change with the city as well, don't they? And here, I'm in Manchester, and we have the Manchester International Festival, which has been running for quite a few years. And, they find a location that's an abandoned warehouse, and they use that, and then the owners suddenly think, why is this abandoned? We can do something with it. So they lose that, and they move on to something else. But you've got to keep it, you've got to keep refreshing what you do, I suppose, because of that, do you?
Yeah, I think that's very true. And we have followed that story of Greenwich and East London, and because we're all about public space and the public realm, it's inevitable that we're in touch with people who are part of that changing landscape, whether that's organisations, voluntary sector organisations who are working with local people to provide them with opportunities, or with sometimes private sector developers and corporate organisations who are taking the landscape of the area forward in different ways. There's a kind of range of ways in which we've done that over the years. I'm trying to think of a really good one to tell you. Really. I think perhaps we should talk a bit for 2022 about our relationship with Royal Docks, who are an organisation that's supported by the Mayor of London to bring about massive change along the Royal Docks. We're going back to when we set the festival up. It was all about Canary Wharf and those areas on the Isle of Dogs that were part of the old Millwall inner and outer docks, and those docks there. But now moving to the east, there are these great, huge water spaces and massive opportunities, and also massive challenge and disadvantage in areas like Silvertown, North Woolwich, and so on. So what Royal Docks is doing, amongst many of the other regeneration things, is really investing in culture and developing new opportunities for local people in Royal Docks, and also for people from further afield to come in and experience what an amazing place it is. So we're doing a project this year with them called Caron, which is a creation of an artist, Peter Hudson, who was originally commissioned by Burning Man to create this incredible installation, which is a zoetrope. It's a three-dimensional zoetrope, giant moving image created sculpturally. Quite hard to do orally, this description, but just imagine that when you're standing there in front of it, you'll be watching Caron, who was the mythical ferryman across the River Styx. That you'll see a sculpture of Caron rowing in a very spectacular way across an imagined River Styx. So this is embedded in an extraordinary sound world created by Right Left Productions, which have strong connections with Punch Drunk, so it will be hugely immersive, and D&B Audio Tech, who are creating that sound world, and other visual installations that will lead you through there. So it'll be a whole site-responsive exploration of that whole myth of Caron, and being able to look at mortality at times like this, I think is, any time is really important for all of us. So that's where we're going to be working with completely new regeneration site this summer.
And it sounds like you're always pushing the boundaries with new technologies as well, more than perhaps conventional theatre.
Yeah, I don't know about more, but there's always, I think that the stagecraft of what you do in outdoor theatre is really fascinating. We've talked about Dan Rusgar's piece. We talked about D&B Audio Tech, and I do love seeing what's possible and breaking boundaries in that way in the outdoors. We'll also be doing something else, which I think will draw on fantastic audiovisual projection techniques with a team of artists from Kiev who are creating a response to the desperate situation of artists and cultural infrastructure in Ukraine in response to the war over 4 nights in Greenwich. A piece that is inspired by this extraordinary tradition of Ukrainian mosaic making, which goes right back to the 9th century, but reached a kind of apotheosis in the middle of the 20th century. So all of this will be created with a sound world, which will take you through this, important part of their cultural identity and pride, and speak too about how much of that has been destroyed, since the Russian invasion in March.
Yeah. So how far ahead do you plan these festivals? I mean, where are you planning at the moment? Are you planning next year's?
I'm well on with 23.
Yeah.
So I've got quite a lot of exciting things. You're never sure which ones are going to fall into line, but that's 23, and I'm starting on 24. But yeah, I try and go a year, 18 months, into the pipeline. But I also like, the other thing is I think one of the things that makes the festival connect with audiences in Greenwich and East London is the fact that we're trying to be responsive to things as they unfold. So, I just talked about the Ukrainian artwork that we're presenting in August. I didn't know that was going to happen until we got really stuck into having those conversations with the Ukrainian Institute in April and May. So, having the facility to be able to respond is really important. We worked with ATC both last year and the year before on really important outdoor theatre projects, which responded to unfolding events, first the murder of George Floyd, and then a kind of bigger response to the public health, the COVID-19 pandemic, with a piece which was inspired by the story of Henrietta Lacks, the Black American woman whose cell line still lives on and has been harvested and commercially exploited by pharmaceutical, multinationals since the 1950s, which was, truly powerful. So, being able to be responsive is important. So, doing both is the juggling act, I guess.
That was Bradley Hemmings, MBE, Artistic Director of Greenwich and Docklands Festival, which runs from the 26th of August to the 11th of September 2022 at various locations in London. For more information, see festival.org/GDIF. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.